We're live.
We're live. Look at that. And we're live and we're on time.
We're on time, man. I mean, that's a big deal. I think, is it 11:30? Yeah. Whew.
Exactly 11:30.
It's exactly 11:30, and we are still working on bringing value to people and talking about cars.
That's right. In a fun way.
Yeah. So we can just chill out. How's your day going?
So far, so good. It's been let's see, there was some interesting bee activity, and the little birds are busy eating and trying to hatch their infertile eggs. It's been very exciting.
Are you producing any honey? Are they bees producing honey?
I assume that they are, that they've been really busy, and they're finding, you can see the pollen on their little legs. It's pretty neat.
Yeah.
They must be making honey, but there was a catastrophe. It was actually fascinating that the snow piled up in front of the opening of the hive, and they actually sent out a suicide mission to dig out the snow. So like they did it so that there was air in the hive, but then when I got there, there were like 100 dead bees. You know?
Oh man, the drones just go out there and do their job and they die because of the cold.
So I felt really bad for them. Like, well, next time I'll take care of it because I don't get killed when I try to clear out the opening to the hive. But they did it. It was actually like I didn't realize that they would do it themselves.
That's amazing. They are amazing creatures.
They are. Be nice to the bees today.
Well, so you and I decided to do this live. We're going to be discussing, let me put it up there.
Yeah.
BMW X3 versus a 2020 Mazda CX5. Yeah. Because you know what, guys? All the stuff going on right now is SUV, SUV, SUV. People want SUVs, right?
That's right.
And they may wonder which ones fit in their budget, which ones don't. And we just picked these two because the size class, you know, they're basically in the very, very similar size. You know, when you look at like cars.com and go to the comparison chart, they're very similar size, but the price is vastly different for one of these vehicles to the other. And so we're just going to talk about it today. Is luxury worth it, right? Is it worth it to spend the extra money to get one of these sports cars?
Good question.
So do you want to start us out?
Well, I can explain that we did a little bit of comparison work to find out exactly what these cars were. And they are very similar, but not exactly the same. And Ronnie has a nice comparison of just one car to the other, which I'm hoping he'll put up on the screen at some point. And what I did was to look at information. I looked at reviews. Like, what did people really think about these things? Are there pros and cons to each car that we should take into account? Let's find out.
Yes, let's do that. And so, like, if you have questions, feel free to post them in the comments box. We will try to address them the best we can. But this is a good topic. You know, people, it's an age-old topic. You know, why would you spend more for luxury? What are you getting that you don't get on the other car? And Bonnie's got a lot of technical data, and I've got experience data. So we can just discuss it and see what it looks like. I mean, I don't think either way is right or wrong. It just depends on what you were trying to do and what budget you're in. So
that's really what we both found, was that it has a lot to do with what you really want. But the question that people come in to talk to us asking about different kinds of cars, and sometimes we have to actually try to pin that down. Like, what exactly are you trying to accomplish here?
Because exactly. They'll come in and say, well, I'm thinking about maybe the BMW X3, and we also saw that the Mazda's got a nice car, and they just don't understand. They're like, well, my budget's like $350 a month. I'm like, well, the BMW is like $600 to $700. So did you know that? But that's our job, is to educate you, right, to help you understand, like, hey, look, you know, if you want one of those cars, we can get one, but this is the budget they're in compared to what you're talking about.
Right. And I think you should tell that story about the Mazda and the Audi. I think that's the opposite experience, but it happens too.
Right. Yeah. You know, I had a client that, you know, I guess I can tell it now. I mean, I had a client that we were looking at doing a specific budget. She could afford a lot more. But what we had decided was, my view of cars isn't like everybody else's. I'm like, well, get as much car as you need, and you don't need to go get the luxury car. That's always been my standpoint. As I'm getting older and talking more to Bonnie, I'm like, maybe I should get a Tesla. I don't know, you know, but the Mazda was a car that we picked. She liked the car somewhat. It had leather and all these things, power sunroof, tailgate, all that stuff. And the payment was like $350. But after a day, she's like, you know what? I really want the luxury car. And I'm like, okay, well, it's double the payment. But that didn't matter. She was like, you know what? I like the dual power seats. I like these little creature comforts. I like the performance, the way the car drives. So there are clients that's what they would like to have. So we have to respect that. And our job is just to bring you the information so that you understand it, not to sell you on any of it. Right.
Right. That, although I think it would be fair to explain that as a group, we tend to drive practical cars. We tend to look at cars as being practical. And that doesn't mean that we don't understand that some people are looking for something other than just a vehicle that will get them from point A to point B. But it's when you come in to talk to us, sometimes we'll often start with the financials, which isn't a bad thing, because a lot of times people come in and they don't really know what they can afford. We don't want them to fall in love with cars that they can't afford, because that just creates a lot of trouble for everybody, mostly for them. So I just feel like that's, full disclosure. We start.
Yeah. I think we do look at it very conservatively.
Yes.
That would be a good, in our office, our entire office is very conservative when it comes to vehicles. Like, don't spend this extra money if you don't have to. That being said, we know that it's also very fun for certain people, and they want to do something with their money that inspires their life or makes them feel really good about themselves, or they just love the way the cars drive. Like in the BMW case, that's what it comes down to. It's a driving machine. And so if you're into driving and like the vehicle to respond, and it's worth an extra $300 a month to you, that's not a bad decision. It's just not what we usually think about in this office. We usually think about how can we help you make a sensible decision and then ride that out for 6 years. You know what I mean?
Right. But I have to admit that I had one client who bought a BMW. It was an electric BMW.
We fell in love with that car, didn't we? And I don't use the word love very often.
Yeah. Now I'm saving up for one.
Right? Yeah, that car was really fun.
That was a really fun car, and it was an electric, which I thought made it really cool. But that's me. But it's it's been an interesting experience for me. Ronnie's been doing this for 20 some years, but I've only been doing this for a year and a half. And so for me, who had spent my entire life driving very practical cars in a family, if you watch the video on Tuesday with my dad, then my dad loves BMWs. He loves fancy cars, luxury cars. And I never knew why until I got to drive that BMW to the detailer. That was
very fun to drive.
Yeah. Like, okay, now I get it.
Well, compare it specifically to what you've been driving, because you're driving a Prius.
Yeah.
And so you get out of that Prius and you get into that BMW and you're like, well, maybe I could spend a little bit more money, because it was just so much more fun to drive.
Yeah. And it has other things, like it's a conversation piece in a way that Prius was once, but isn't now. That for me, maybe clients who want luxury cars might relate to me better if I'm driving a luxury car.
Right.
So there's all kinds of reasons.
Well, let's show them what we're talking about today. So guys, we're talking about 2020 BMW X3 versus a 2020 Mazda CX5. Why do we pick those two cars? Because they're very similar in size, and they're very similar in class. So like it's a small SUV, or like actually it's a mid-size SUV, because they have smaller vehicles like the X1 and then the Mazda CX30. So those cars are a little bit smaller in actually size and cubic volume inside the car. Yeah. So we just picked those two. I'll show you a picture of the BMW. So this is the this is the X3 that we're talking about. It's a 2020 BMW.
But I got that those wheels, those are add-ons. Those are expensive wheels.
Bonnie's making sure you understand these wheels are add-ons.
Yeah, so, like $600 or $700 wheels there.
Right. So this is the 2020 BMW X3. And this car, the one for comparison, is around $47,000. Not really completely loaded out, but definitely with a few creature comforts. So if you go to BMW's website, you can rebuild this car on your own, and you can see that it's around $46,000 to $47,000, and then all-wheel drive. So we're in Colorado, so we're talking about all-wheel drive.
Yeah.
Now what we're comparing that to is the Mazda CX5. And lucky for me, we had 2 white vehicles. So, you know, to make it easy, but this is a Mazda CX5. And I know some of you might be thinking, well, that car's smaller. I'm like, I thought so too, but I've got more data to support what I'm talking about here. I mean, that Mazda is very similar in size to that BMW, and in some cases, even bigger. So when we talk about this, we're just trying to keep it as objective as possible. Right, Bonnie?
Right, right. Yeah. Apples to apples, or Mazdas to BMWs. However,
right.
Yeah.
So let's take that down. I got banners. I'm going crazy with all this stuff. So
all the banners.
So let's take a look at what we're talking about. I'll share the screen because Bonnie thought that would be a good idea.
Yeah, I would like to see it.
This is the screen right now that on my screen. It's basically, if you go to cars.com, you can pull up a model comparison chart and it'll show you 2020 BMW X3 versus 2020 Mazda CX5.
Nice.
And there's the pictures. This one is an X3 all-wheel drive sports active vehicle, and this is the touring package. I picked the touring package because it's comparative as far as equipment. So it's got leatherette and heated seats and power tailgate and the sunroof. So it's a little bit more luxurious than just the base model car. And I didn't want you guys to think I was just looking at the base model car. Now this says 28,230. This car is actually $30,700, and this one is around 47 as equipped for our comparison. As you scroll down, you just look at the details, right? The gas mileage is identical on these vehicles. Combined means city and highway combined. So that's crazy, because what's cool about the BMW is look at all the horsepower it generates and still gets the same gas mileage as the Mazda. So
you might have to read us the numbers. They're pretty small.
They're too small. So basically 248 horsepower versus 187. But the BMW gets the same gas mileage.
20 miles to the gallon?
26 combined. Yeah.
That's better than I expected. That's better than a lot of trucks.
It's a lot better than I expected as well.
Yeah.
They're both 5-passenger cars. The consumer rating on cars.com is 4.9 for both vehicles.
Huh. That's interesting.
Right. You know, so we scroll on down here. Look at the gas, you know, oh, that's destination charge. So there's your gas mileage, 26 combined, 24 in the city for both of them. And then the Mazda gets 1 mile to the gallon better on the highway than the BMW, but I don't think anybody's going to count a mile.
I'm really surprised by that.
Here are the things that I found interesting. We actually lease a 2018 Mazda CX5 touring package, just like we're comparing today.
Mm-hmm.
And where is that rear legroom? Front track, like a lot of these things are really, really similar, but what I wanted to really look at was passenger volume. So the Mazda has 104 cubic feet of passenger volume versus the BMW's 101. So that's 3 cubic feet, right? The front legroom is better on the Mazda. The front headroom is better on the BMW. And then the rear legroom is better in the Mazda by 3 inches. So that was interesting to me, because I find my son is getting bigger. And so when he's behind me, I have to slide my seat forward in that Mazda if I'm in the passenger seat. And so if I've got to give up another 3 inches in the BMW, that's not going to make me personally happy. I'm going to be like, wow, the car was already too small. Now, granted, I'm 6'2". So, you know, I don't fit in a lot of these cars like everybody else, but I just found that to be quite interesting. The whole point of this is, though, these cars are very, very similar. You know, they're very similar as when you talk about size and space and gas mileage and those types of things, you know. Now, Bonnie, you can share with us why they're not similar.
Yeah, I can. So I went through and I looked at the reviews. And so what I learned was that with the Mazda gets very high ratings. People really like it. And
so you can talk about the Mazda first. I'll bring that little picture up, the Mazda CX5.
I didn't find much in the way of things that people didn't like about it. What they said is that in a Mazda, you feel like you're in control when you're steering it. Like they are designed to make you feel like you've got control of the car. Now, this is different than the BMW. And the BMW, it's faster, and it also the handling is made to feel more professional, more precise. So you don't get that precise professional handling like for racing in a Mazda. but you will get it in a BMW. So those things are a little bit different. The Mazda, as a general thing, looks more, I want to use the word pedestrian. Like it looks more like an ordinary car. I guess pedestrian is a kind of cars. The BMW, however, it's beautiful. It's made to look beautiful, and it has an unusual shape. And you can get, like, you could not get those fancy wheels on the Mazda. You can only, like, if you want something like that, if you want a car that has like contrast stitching and oyster colored leather on the inside, that's going to be your BMW. An interesting thing I learned about the BMW was that it is made to stop. The brakes, they pay a lot of attention to the brakes. Now, of course, the brakes in a Mazda are going to be good. They're going to stop you in your ordinary driving, but the BMW brakes they're made to be really precise stopping machines. Because it's also a driving machine. That's basically what it's made to be. And the last thing that I found was that the BMWs are known for comfort. Like somebody said in a review I read, said, I could drive this car for hours and not have to get out. And I think that is the case, that it's they're made to feel really comfortable. The interior is comfortable. The way it drives is comfortable. You talked about the wheelbase being longer, so the ride is a little bit softer. A Mazda is more of a daily driver kind of car, and so it's going to feel more ordinary. So if you're taking a long trip in it, you might feel the need to get out of it more often.
Well, you know, that's great. I mean, I think some of the stuff you're talking about is correct. Like you get black or tan in the interior of a Mazda, right?
Yeah.
BMW used to like oyster leather and pearl and wood versus carbon fiber, you know, all different types of themes, you know.
Yeah, very big difference in how you can make them look. That Mazda is not made for looking at, the Mazda is made for driving. The BMW is to a certain extent made to say, hey, look, I have this beautiful car. Then it's different.
Yeah, and you know, they're Bavarian, you know, it's BMW stands for Bavarian Motor Works, you know, so
like the Bavarian cream. Now there's one more reason to buy one.
Yeah. Lots of people like them. You know, they're very I mean, I don't dislike them. I just think that for so long I sold used cars and people were like, well, is this car going to hold up? And if you have been driving a Honda Civic and then you want to go into a BMW that's used, what you're going to find out is the maintenance and upkeep of that vehicle is going to cost you a lot more than what you were actually used to. So you have to just understand that when you're going into it. Yeah,
those cars are not, the Consumer Reports ratings are pretty consistent about luxury cars. They are not made for reliability. People love them. They have the highest overall satisfaction ratings of any car.
Make that point, because you did figure that out a while ago. Like the reliability ratings are low, but the client satisfaction ratings are super high.
Yeah.
Because they're paying for it. You know, they're paying for luxury. They're paying for the customer experience. They're paying for all that stuff. So I found that to be really interesting.
What that says to me is that they really are nice cars. Like, because if you're paying a lot for a car, you're going to expect a lot from that car. But they must be more or less meeting those expectations. Because people, they had very high consumer satisfaction ratings, much higher. And I thought it was funny because when you look at like the Toyotas and the Hondas, and they're very reliable, people talk about how they last forever. They're not that expensive to fix. You can get them fixed anywhere. Lowest satisfaction ratings of anything. They really.
It's crazy to even think about it, you know, because they're always built as this, everybody loves them, you know, and I think people do love them, but
they do, yeah.
They don't fall in love with them like BMWs and Audis and Mercedes.
No, it's a different kind of, I suspect that the people when people buy them, they're thinking of something different.
More practical.
Much more practical. It gets me from point A to B and I don't have to take it to the mechanic very often. But if I'm taking if I'm driving across the country, we're going to be stopping at every rest stop that is comfortable. So I think it would be really interesting actually to rent a luxury car and try driving it across the country and seeing. That would be a really fun video series, wouldn't it?
I can't wait for you to do that.
We should all go.
Oh my goodness. I'll pull the camper.
That's it.
Yeah. That'd be interesting. So guys, look, so let's talk about the nuts and bolts of this. So the gas mileage is very similar in these cars. But you know, for argument purposes, I just pulled up some lease numbers on these vehicles. That Mazda with a lot of equipment at around $30,000 leases for about $360 a month plus tax. So in Colorado Springs, that's about $385 or something like that with no money down. Right. So you could basically just make your first payment and qualify for that lease for 36 months. at 12,000 miles per year.
Right.
The BMW is like 690 plus tax with no money down. So, you know, you really have to want that type of a vehicle in order to spend double the payment in order to get into that car. And I take that data right from BMW's website. So I just went onto the website, I built the car, and then I plugged in the numbers and it came up with $690 a month plus tax. So if you were buying that car, it's almost $800. So the Mazda, if you're buying it, is probably around $650. So 5-year loan, you know, so that is what we're talking about here. Why you would spend more money to get yourself a luxury car versus a practical car. I guess that's what we have to call it, right? It's a practical car versus a luxury car.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and that's actually how we got into the discussion of how we tend to look at cars in a very practical way. But, you know, maybe there's something to these luxury cars that, you know, like Ronnie talks about leasing a Tesla, and I think about leasing a BMW, you know, one electric or another, just to, because I like electric cars, but it's, I mean, I don't have one. I don't know if I like them yet, but I'd like to find out that, but it would be a whole different experience to drive something like that. And that's where, like, we should have gotten my dad to join us today, because he would have told us all about why a luxury car is better. My dad loves luxury cars. And so this has been great for him that suddenly I have seen the light. Now I understand what all this spending money on cars is about, and why.
I'm like, I don't want to spend more money on it just because I like it. You know, it's like, but that's also coming from someone that's been in the car business for over 20 years. And so I just have a very different opinion of vehicles. But I think after we were talking before we went live, guys, and I'm like, you know what, maybe we'll get a luxury car down the line. We'll set some goals. We'll hit those goals. We'll get some luxury cars, you know, and we'll see how that works out for us, you know?
Right. Yeah. And maybe that's not a bad idea. I mean, that's what the network marketing companies do. That if you
I've had them, you know, I've had a Lexus, I've had Range Rovers and BMWs and all that stuff. I mean, I've had them, but I never did fall in love with them enough.
Right.
To just keep them, you know?
Maybe that's why you don't maybe you just don't stay in love with them. Although my dad has been leasing these cars for a long time. So
yeah,
some people, I don't know I don't know. It would be an interesting. That's why I think we should lease something expensive and drive it across the country and do a video series. I just think that would be.
You know what? Maybe we could just get BMW to give us one.
Maybe they would do that. Maybe they would sponsor it for us.
Yeah.
We could
2 brokers going across the country.
Yeah, we could drive it to Atlanta and, you know, see what happens. See how we like it.
All right, let's see if we got any questions. So guys, what kind of questions do you have about this? Like, would you spend more money to get yourself a luxury car? Does it matter that much to you, or is it just a point A, point B type vehicle? And looks like Rosanna in California. How you doing, Rosanna? And hi, Danny Ramos. How you doing, buddy? She's like, let's see. People are caught up with the idea that they have a BMW. Even if you compare vehicles like a Mazda versus BMW, most will take the BMW just because it's a BMW.
Well, that's a good point.
It's a great point. You know, let's keep it up there. I'll keep it up there. I mean, I think it's a good point, but here's what we see. So someone will come in and want a BMW, but have Mazda money.
Right, right.
And so what they think is, I'll get an older BMW to get the price down. And then it becomes a long-term commitment in that vehicle with a lot of maintenance and upkeep and repairs. Right, Bonnie?
That's right. That's right. It's not the most reliable vehicle in the world.
No, they say so too. I mean, it's like they just aren't. So that's a great point. So Rosanna is saying they buy them just because it's a BMW. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. You know,
she is
I think
right.
You're right. Yeah, and so Rosanna also, oh wow, I like the Mazda. I wonder if Mazda has current incentives. We have talked, Rosanna, and this car is a little bit small for what's going on. But yes, they do have incentives going on right now. I think that I lease one. We have one. So I like the car, but we only have 2 kids. And so that car serves the purpose. And we don't drive it very far. We just drive it around town. But if you'd like to talk about one, let me know. Let's see. We've got something else. Luxury isn't for me.
Yeah, many people feel that way. That's a very practical. It's because there's a lot of good cars out there that are not luxury cars.
Yeah, but they have a lot of luxury features.
Some do. That's very true.
like, you know, the Mazda, for instance, it has leather, has heated seats, it has a power seat, it has push button start, power tailgate, power sunroof, navigation. I'm like, what else more would you want? You know,
ventilated seats. Can you get ventilated seats in a Mazda?
you can in the Grand Touring Edition, so you'd have to step it up a little bit. I think that car goes upwards of $40-something thousand. So at that point, I'm like, well, let's get the BMW.
Yeah. Now with the BMW, a lot of the luxury features are not standard. You still have to select them and pay for them, but you can get ventilated seats. My personal stance on this, because I'm always warm, that if a car has leather, it must have ventilated seats, because otherwise it's just a thing to stick to, and I don't like that. I do not like to stick to the seats.
Well, so I mean, it's a really difficult one. Like if you're looking for a sport utility, like which you probably are, because cars are not as popular as they used to be.
Like sedans.
They just aren't as popular as they used to be, but
not at all.
I have nothing against either one of these cars. I think that you just have to, is luxury worth it? That was our title, is luxury worth it? So I think it really comes down to a personal decision. You know, it's not something that I can ever say, this is going to be exactly what you should be doing. I've had people come in wanting luxury cars, and I'm like, do you really need that? And then you ask them, like, what is it that you need? I need leather. I'm like, you can get leather in this car. You know what I mean? Like, they just don't know. They think they have to have this $50,000 car when they could really get a $32,000 car and be just fine.
Right. And that's something we really specialize in, is helping people figure those things out. How can can you get what you want for the money that you have, or for what you want to spend? So that I just feel like it's necessary to point out that if you have questions like that, give us a call. We can really help you with that.
That's actually a great point. Give us a call. We can definitely talk to you about it. Now we have a comment from someone who said that you need to drive what you can afford, but I have noticed a difference in how German cars drive. I grew up in a family that had 5 Mercedes-Benzes over the years, drove the last one for over 750,000 miles. I mean, that is a lot of miles.
Miles, yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, that's like, wow, how many years did that take, you know? So I can't see who posted that, but I can probably check it out on Facebook later. But congratulations, that's crazy. I wonder if that car made it to 1 million.
That's a good question. Very good question. And how they got it that far. That, I mean, not that like any given Mercedes or any given BMW may last you a long time, but on average, and I just want to make that clear, that, you know, your personal experience is accurate, but on average, they don't last as long as some.
Right. 30 years is how long they had that car. He just posted.
Wow.
30 years.
You must have taken darn good care of it.
That's longer than I've been in the business, and I've been in the business longer than most.
That's I think that may be longer than some of our salespeople have been alive.
That's true.
Or Mac might have been 2.
Yeah, he was 2.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I'm glad we did this. We're going to try to do more of these and compare some different cars. So if you want to post in some cars you'd like us to talk about, we're interested in that. You know, so this was a good one, I thought, just discussing this. And then maybe we'll compare the Mazda to something else that's a little bit more practical next time, so it's more even across the board. But I hope you got what I said, right? You can lease one of the Mazdas for around less than 400, and the BMW is going to be around 700. So take that to thought. Decide which particular brand you'd like to be in. We can help you with all of these brands. Not a problem. Any final thoughts, Bonnie?
No, other than I'm scheming how I'm going to get my electric BMW. That's what I'm thinking about now.
Bonnie's in the 700 a month category, guys. She likes the luxury.
I want to try the luxury.
There's nothing wrong with that. I might have to join you on that, Bonnie.
All right. Well, then there we are. Like, people, you know, they spend their money on all kinds of crazy things. Like, some people want to, you know, jump out of airplanes, and that's expensive. And some people want to, you know, try a luxury car.
Right on. I like it. So I really appreciate you guys coming in with us today. We're going to come back later on next week, and we will talk to you soon. Everybody be safe out there.
That's right. Have a good day.
All right.